Welcome to Human Potential at Work, the show where we explore social impact, inclusion, and empowerment of everyone, including persons with disabilities. Your host is Deborah Rue, CEO of Rue Global Impact, and co-founder and chairwoman of Billion Strong, an identity and empowerment organization designed to bring billions of voices of persons with disabilities together. To join the global community and to donate to the cause, visit billion-strong.org. That's billion-strong.org. And now, on to the episode.
Hello, everyone. My name is Deborah Rue, and I'm the CEO of Rue Global Impact and the Executive Chair of Billion Strong. My guest today is John Mallett, and he's been on before. And so we'll make sure that we put the first episode, on so that you can watch that, because John is the CEO of Mainstream Mortgage, but he's also America's home ownership coach. And so, of course, we know that this is a global conversation, but at the same time, there's so much that we can learn about what's happening here in the United States. And John, his information is relevant to whatever country you're in, because these are very confusing times. John, welcome back to the program.
Oh, thank you, Deborah. Great to be here.
Yes, I know the audience really enjoyed your last episode, and
Oh,
I did as well. So thank you for coming
Thank
back.
you. Oh, you bet.
And
Great to be with you. Thank you for all the work
Yes.
you're doing. You're doing fantastic.
Thank you. I think it's going to take all of us, but I also want to thank Kevin, my producer, who's behind the scenes today. We appreciate everything he's doing. And John, before I turn it over to you, I'm going to do a quick visual description. For my audience members that might be listening to this on a podcast or might be blind or visually impaired. So I'm a white woman today with brown glasses on, and I have these lovely eyeglass chains so that I know where my glasses are. I have gray and purple hair, and I'm wearing a green and blue top. And I really appreciate everybody joining today. John, do you mind giving a visual description of yourself, but also telling us again who you are for those that might not have seen the first episode?
Oh, you bet. You bet. Yes. Good morning. It's great to be here with you. I am a white male. I have brown eyes, brown hair, and I'm wearing a blue shirt and a jacket, a blazer. And I am just so grateful to be here. I am America's mortgage coach, and I really work towards helping people buy their first home, as well as other things that they need as far as home ownership goes. That's really what I am. I'm an expert on home ownership in the United States. And when it comes to the principles that I teach, it carries all over the world as well.
Right. That's right. And I know here in the United States, we consider home ownership very important to who we are as Americans. We are
Yes.
very proud. That's something we always say. Go and buy. I was so proud when my son bought his first home. I was just so proud because it's such an important thing. Now, I assume that's the same all over the world, but I
Yeah.
just did want to say this is very important to us. And John, it's very confusing for us right now as well. And I know right before we got on air, you had mentioned, yeah, and the media is not helping. The media is really confusing us and telling us the housing prices are so high, and it makes people feel like they can't buy a home.
Yeah.
And you deal with people that are first home buyers, which is even more difficult. And the reason why I was attracted to your work is because you really believe in helping diverse. You're very focused on helping African Americans, people with disabilities, anyone. You're not just focused on a lot of the same group that's always focused on. And that's one thing that really impressed me about your work.
Yeah. Yeah. And, what you say about the media, bless their hearts. I know they're doing the best they can, but unfortunately, they don't really have all the information. And it's your comment about helping people buy their first home is really important because I'm in Southern California. We have one of the highest price points in the nation. And yet we have first time home buyers buying all the time. First home, and the house may be $1 million, or it might be $750,000 or $900,000, and they're buying them. And they're buying them responsibly to the point that they can actually afford the payment. And so there's a lot of misinformation. In fact, a couple of studies were done that showed that 33%, Deborah, 33% of people that rent can buy and don't know it. In fact, there is another study done that showed that there are 1.9 million to 3 million in the African American community that rent right now that can buy. and
Wow.
most of them don't know it. And so there's a lot of misinformation out there where, yes, prices are going up. There's no question about that. And yet they can do it. It's the concept of being able to transform your lives through homeownership. And that's what's so important to me.
And that is just such an important statement because, and I'm going to have you answer this question because I think I know this answer, but I realize that I might not. But so why would we want to buy a home rather than rent? Because John, if I buy a home, I have to mow the grass. I have to do a lot of stuff. If I'm renting,
Right. That's right.
maybe I have to do that stuff too. But I think I know why. But is it just because I've been told my whole life that you've gotta be a homeowner? But why? Why do we need to? Why
Oh
can
man,
this?
that's the best question. That's where the rubber meets the pavement right there. And the reason is that today, if the American dream, the homeownership as the American dream was a marketing campaign that started in 1932. And it caught on as a marketing campaign that homeownership is the American dream. And that's
Mhm.
fine. I agree with that. I have no problem with that. But the problem is if I go to a millennial or I go to an African American or I go to somebody like that and I say, hey, you need to buy a home because it's the American dream, there's a really high probability I'm going to get a hand gesture that's not very nice. It just it doesn't work. And so what we did is we did quite a bit of research on this, Deborah, and we said, why? I mean, asking the same question. In fact, all of my work and my book and everything stems from your question. And the why is that it transforms lives by owning a home. And it does it in several different ways. For example, for me, and I brought this up in our last discussion, but just to review it with you quickly, before I was 8 years old, we lived in a beautiful 2-story home 2 blocks away from the ocean in Santa Cruz, California when I was a kid. And then when just before my 8th birthday, I walked in from school and my father's luggage is all over the living room. And I said, what's going on with this? And my mother put me on her lap and said, your dad's leaving. And basically he abandoned the family.
Wow.
And so a couple months later, there we were in this really ugly yellow station wagon with a U-Haul on the back. And we pulled out of our driveway and drove to San Luis Obispo because my mother really had a desire to finish her education, go to college in a little town called San Luis Obispo, and get a degree so she could provide for her family. But what we didn't expect were some of the challenges that came. So from ages 8 to 14, we moved 5 times. And it was mostly just because we couldn't pay the rent or we were asked to leave. And you get into that kind of a situation, you can't even put a hole in the wall. The stability factor was like zero. And then I remember when I was 12 years old, my pastor and a neurosurgeon came to our home. My mother had been falling. She'd been in the hospital. And they explained that our mother was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And from age 12 on, I became a quasi caregiver for my mother. And really understanding multiple sclerosis is a debilitating disease.
Yep.
And it loses motor functions. It has many challenges. And
Mhm.
then when I was 18, I was at her bedside as she transitioned and died when I was 18 years old from acute leukemia. And so having gone through that process, having gone through the idea where you're stable one day, but you're not the next day, really began to make an impression upon me. And the idea is that the experience of growing up as someone who rented versus growing up as someone who owned is entirely different experience for a child.
Wow.
And
That's such
and when
powerful.
yeah, when you think about it for a minute, when you're renting, the comments are, we have to leave because the landlord is raising the rent, or the toilet's broken and the landlord's too cheap to fix it. Or you get this idea of being a victim, and children hear that. And when you want to put a hole in the wall because you want to hang a picture, and your mom says, no, don't do that because when we move, we won't get our deposit back. Well, when she makes that statement, when we move, basically subconsciously, I'm going, or any child is going to go, wait a minute, I'm not really stable here. And when they graduate or when they leave home, studies show this. There's a 8 to 15% less chance that they will own a home because they lived in a home growing up in a rental. Now you go now you go to a child who grows up in a home that's owned by the parents. Then the parents come in and they say, gee whiz, Johnny, what do you want your room to look like? What color would you like to paint it? What would you like to do to your room? But just starting with that is, man, that is huge. And so many people take that for granted, but that is a big deal to say, hey, we're going to make our home the way that we want it. And
It's so powerful though.
yeah,
And you took that's one thing I so respect about you. You took those really major hardships and you turn it into your life's work. And that's I just am very grateful for that. And I also think of some renting and stuff and what has happened because not all borrowers are treated the same.
um,
I knew that is just a ridiculous, but it's so true. And I was in the mortgage banking business before became an entrepreneur, and I enjoyed being a mortgage banker. I was a mortgage banker for years because it's home ownership. Once again, that it's where we live. It's our home.
yeah,
And so I just think it's just so important. But then you see people being excluded by the lenders. And there's just so many moving parts with John, and I know you know that.
right.
But I think that is one reason why it's so important to talk about what you're doing. And because so let's move a little bit to that, John, and that
Sure.
how does it work? If I am, and I remember when my son bought his house, and he bought his house differently than I would have in the past, in
Right.
that he has a fiance, and so he and his fiance bought it together.
Oh, great.
Whereas before I was always right, but it's like times are so different and changing.
Yeah.
And some of his friends, and he's a millennial, some of his friends are just buying it as friends together. So it's very interesting how
Right.
some of the millennials are responding. But I wish more people would come to you, John, and understand that they really could own a home. And once you own a home, like you said, all these other things will start, falling into place with your credit report. But how do you help people? How does that work?
The way that first of all, let me talk about something you're talking about. Not all people are treated equally. That's a
Mm,
really big deal. And it's a big deal because legally you cannot discriminate as a lender. I cannot turn somebody down for ethnicity or sexual orientation or anything like that. And so I know that. And banks know that. But the problem is that they'll look at your material and they'll say you don't qualify. Simply just saying they're turned down because they don't qualify is a big factor in a filter that lenders use to get rid of people that they don't really want to spend time with. And it's really important to understand that when you go out to a lender, you've got to find somebody who wants to work for you. And I
yes.
usually find that's usually in the broker community. Some of the lenders and banks will help out, but generally speaking, brokers are more willing to want to be able to work with you because they don't really care. I don't really care. My job is to responsibly help you buy your first home or to buy a home if you're a repeat buyer. That's my number one priority. And it really comes down to how much dedication your loan officer has to put the deal together and help you. We had one lender the family had 3 disabled children, and the parents were just beside themselves, but they didn't realize that they could use the income that they were getting from the care of their children because they were caregivers and they were certified by the state, so they were paid. And we went through it took us 4 months to get the loan approved, but we got the loan approved and closed it. Now that's not gonna happen all the time, but it's really a function of a lot of getting your loan approved is how much ingenuity and structure your lender can put together to structure the loan so that it can be approved. That's a really big deal is how much
Yes.
time are they willing to invest in it? Now, sometimes I will tell my clients right now is not the best time for you based on your income or your credit. You don't qualify at this point, but that doesn't mean that you can't in the future. And
Right.
yeah,
And then you give them tips on what they can do to get
correct.
ready. I would assume that, right?
Right.
Because I remember when my son was starting to go through this process, he at first was talking to brokers and mortgage personnel and stuff that they didn't seem to want to help him. And so he went and he found a real estate agent that really spoke to him. And he happened to be somebody around the same age as him. And
Mhm.
then they took him. They said, no, don't just go to anybody. So if you find the right people to work with, they know the people which is a problem because everybody should act the same. That's what our laws say, but we know
Right,
this doesn't happen.
right, right.
And there's so many programs that can be offered. So I think that's one reason why people need to come to you. I really do. And I really wish that you could be that everyone would recognize what you're doing because people should be able to buy a home. And right now, John, at these very weird, intense times, we have all these problems with the stock market, Coinbase, cryptocurrency just crashed. I remember as I was thinking, if I sold my house, am I'm so confused about it because we all don't know what is going to be stable. But
Mhm.
one thing that I think I know is that land is land. I own land in my home and I own my home, and that's real property. And I feel like
That's right.
that makes me safer in these unsafe times or perceived unsafe times. But is that still true?
Oh, I believe that true. I really do. I think that what people are looking for right now, Deborah, that I've noticed that because of the pandemic and things of that nature, people feel like the rug's been pulled out from under their feet, and there's a higher level of anxiety. And so what they're really looking for is stability. Now, this is really, I want to make this statement that's really important is that people say you got to get your financial act together or you got to get your act together so you can buy a home. That's insinuating, inferring that renters don't have their act together, which is not true. There are a lot of people that are renting for very legitimate reasons. So I want to make it real clear that just because you're renting doesn't mean, that bad things are happening. You're just not in a situation where you're buying. So it's really
Right.
important. What the difference is that when you own a home, you have a higher certainty of stability. And that stability is really important, knowing that you have a roof over your head. Now, you've got to have a job and you got to be able to make the payments, but that has to happen in rent as well. And so it's the
Right.
same thing. And when you own a home, home ownership is like gold. The median net wealth of a renter in the United States today is about $5,000. The median net wealth of somebody who owns a home is $230,000. So it's a 46 times difference. It's huge as far as financial aspects go. But a lot of people don't realize the studies show that there's a 50% chance less that you'll get divorced if you own a home. Children do to better.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it
Children.
is about stability
Yeah.
and security and
Right.
us feeling safe.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
You know,
That's fascinating.
and what happens is I'll give you an example. We had a couple come in and it was really sweet. They came in and they said, "Can we qualify?" And I looked at everything and I said, "No, but this is what you need to do." And so a year later, they came back. They had done everything that they were supposed to do. In fact, they pulled a trailer onto their parents' backyard so they could live in it for a year so they didn't have to
Wow.
pay rent. They paid off all their debts. And then they came in and they were ready and they bought. They were in a home in the next 60 days. Now, what's really interesting to me is we call a principle that we teach called the drive to buy. Once somebody gets it in their head that they can buy a home or that it's even a remote possibility. I mean, Deborah, even if it's a remote possibility, if they can get that into their head and they go, yeah, I want to buy a home, then the drive to buy kicks in. And when that kicks in, it doesn't stop anybody. They go ask for raises. They go get new jobs. They go back to school. They pay their debts off and get their collection account. They do all sorts of things that create an environment, excuse me, so that they're in that position to buy. And that is a very powerful driving force. And they're able to do that. And so I think it's really important that these surveys that show that, like in California, it only shows that there's only a 22% chance of people qualify for a home based on
What?
prices in California.
Wow.
And it has a 22% affordability. That's like telling somebody they got two weeks to live because they're dying of cancer. That's giving them a
Right.
death wish, which is ridiculous. It might be based on the income that they're at, but it doesn't mean that's the way it has to. They can go for shared home ownership. They can get a roommate. They can. There's all these sorts of things that can happen to where it doesn't matter.
I know. It's just so confusing right now. We're trying to figure out, do we buy, do we sell, do we, and so very confusing time. John, I know you're in California, but you're America's coach.
You bet.
So what if I'm in Virginia? Can I come to you and get advice and get
Well, you can certainly, yes, I can certainly coach you on it. We're not licensed in Virginia, but I can certainly refer you to somebody who is.
Good. See,
Yeah,
that's what I
take
would like
care of you.
because once again, just looking at my son's experience, when he tried going just the regular, I'm going to look in the, I'm saying my age, looking in the phone book. What's that, Deborah? But he did it normal. And then he started getting doors shut. He's okay, forget it. So he went and he found somebody that, like you said, wanted to work for him
Right.
and his fiance. What's
Yeah.
the goal here? He's the customer. But I also warned him, John, that when you come into closing, expect there to be problems. I don't know. Anytime I've bought 5 houses over my lifetime, and closing is always nerve-wracking to me. It's just part of the process, but there's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts. It doesn't have to be. We really focus on
I need
closing.
to use you.
Yeah, we focus on closing a lot. In fact, when you go in to sign your loan documents, there shouldn't be one thing that you don't know about. And the most important thing is to know how much money you got to come in with. And we review that with our clients in detail, giving them the estimate of settlement cost even before they come in and going over it with that and make sure that they understand what that is. That's what causes the greatest amount of anxiety, Deborah, is going in and seeing that you don't have enough money to close. That's a bad surprise.
It's or going in and it's, "We found a problem with the title." What do you mean?
Right.
There's a lot of moving parts, but I am just so fascinated with the part about safety and security and who we become when we become
Oh, yeah, you're
homeowners.
different. And that's why we call it transforming lives through homeownership. And I think that what you're talking about and referring to is outstanding because it drives down to the deepest level, which is in our opinion, and I've coined this is homeownership is a sacred trust. Because if you
Oh,
treat your home as, and not necessarily in a religious text, but in a text that says if you treat your home as something that's sacred, it will return the benefits to you will be immeasurable over your lifetime. And
it will.
you cannot imagine what it's like until you're in that situation. And I think a lot of people who own a home kind of just take it for granted. And we
I
need to resurface the idea that, man, it's a really big deal and it's really a worthwhile endeavor to be able to pass that on to your posterity as well.
I agree, and I also think it just using my son again, I remember him renting, he was going to VCU and renting and everything, and but then when he bought, the way they started him and his fiancée started engaging with the neighbors, and it was like, I don't know, it's just there like you said, there's this pride of ownership. So
Oh, yeah.
their gardens and their flowers, and then the
Right.
neighbors are walking by and saying, "Oh, I love what you're doing."
Yeah.
And I also like, John, that they bought in a very diverse part of our community. But that's who they are. They love the diversity of different people. They don't want to just be where I live. It's everybody looks a lot alike
Yeah.
except
No,
me with my
really
purple
vanilla.
hair. But
Yeah.
uh, yeah, yeah, I'm in rural Virginia, but I just love walking around the neighborhoods in his neighborhood because of the beautiful diversity. I love diversity.
Mm.
And so it's the energy is different there. So that's also something that someone like John can help with because you want to find the right place. And I remember my son lives in the north side of our community. And somebody said, "You don't want to be, do you sure you want to live here?" And I've been living here for the last 8 years. They're like, "Oh, so you know it." He said, "Yep." Because it's revitalizing
Yeah.
pretty dramatic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
That's a great place to start. Location is really important. And the quality of home ownership is not only that you own the home, but your neighbors and who you're associating with. That's
Yes.
the quality of it. Also, it has a lot to do if you have children. It's great for them to have the expression of being able to know a diverse group of children as well.
Oh, yes. So true. So true.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I know that I promised to keep you in about 30 minutes and I haven't gone over my time, but
Right.
I tell the audience how they can learn more about the courses that you do. The courses are available to
Well,
everybody regardless,
yeah, right now I'm just doing a lot of individual coaching. My book is online. It's on Amazon. It's Buy Your First
which
Home
is a
Today.
great place to go.
And the thing to do is to call me and I will coach you through it. We are going to be coming out with some programs, with some webinars. We just did one recently that was on shared homeownership. The title of it was Friends Don't Let Friends Rent. There's a lot of people out there that are roommates that they're renting, they might as well buy. And so it makes a lot
Right,
of
right.
sense to be able to engage and do that. And so the main thing is to call me, and whatever I can do for you and your listeners and viewers, I'm here.
Yeah, and I want to say that I forget, John. Do on Main Street Mortgage, do y'all have a newsletter, or do you have some place where people can give you their contact information and
Yes.
get
Yes.
updates?
Yeah.
Good,
Let me give
good.
you
So they
my,
can go there.
yeah, you can go to my website at johnwmillette.com. You can go to mainstreetloans.com, or you can give me a call. I'll be glad to give you my number, and whatever we can do to help you, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, and one thing we'll do is we'll make sure we put those things in the with the episode so that y'all know how to get hold of them. But John, I want to ask you one more question because I actually do have 3 or 4 more minutes. But
Sure, sure.
I
Take
had
your time.
heard, yeah, a few years ago, I had heard the millennials don't want to buy. They're not going to buy houses. They're not interested in houses or automobiles. They don't want to, they're just going to use Lyft. And I was like, what? Because, yeah, and that definitely does not seem to be true to me. But I was just wondering, you know,
Oh,
what
right
you
now,
thought of that.
the millennials are the largest single
That's
demographic of people buying homes today. They are
yeah.
number one, and they are actually increasing their buying activity. So
Oh,
it's
yes.
huge. They're buying lots of cars. The real facts are is millennials are doing quite well. They have
So
their 401ks, they have their IRAs. Again, it's the perception is not accurate at all when it comes to the millennial generation. In fact, parents often say, I just don't know how my kids are going to be able to afford a home, and they go through that. But the reality is that they're the largest group of people buying homes. And the second
that's what I'm
yeah, and the
right.
second group of buying homes, the largest single group buying homes are unmarried women.
Ooh,
Yep.
that's cool. All
Right.
right. It's just there's so much garbage that gets piled on all this. Oh, you
Right.
can't do that if you're this. You can't,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So
I was preparing for our session today, and I read a comment by one of the people that after an article, and he said, "Yeah, all sounds good, but I know I can't buy." I just thought, no, that's not the message. The
that
message
is not the message.
if you really
Yeah,
put your mind to it, you'll be amazed. The universe is going to come together and make it happen. You can do it
I
if you really
agree.
put your mind to it. You got to do it responsibly. I'm not saying, but there's a lot of things you can do for, especially for disability. You can go to HUD, they have vouchers. You can go to Habitat for Humanity. You can go to all these different places. There's just so much opportunity out there. It takes work. You got to put time into it. But once you do, it's worth it.
I agree. John, will you say the name of your book again? Because you said it before, but I think I talked a little bit over you.
Yeah.
And I just before you say it, I want to also remind the audience that not only does it help John when you buy his book, but it really helps to leave positive reviews.
Oh, yeah.
That's how the algorithm of Amazon works. And he really, the book has so much great data. Once again, no matter where you live. Because home ownership is important all over the world. I really recommend buying the book. But John, tell us the name of the book again.
Yeah. It's Buy Your First Home Today. And you can also call me. My direct line is 805-432-2382. And Deborah, we'll take care of your people.
Yes, thank you, John. And thank you for all you're doing. People need to feel stable right now. People are scared and feeling unsafe. And so I really appreciate how you took the hardships in your life and turned them around so that other people could prosper. So thank you, John.
Well,
That's
thank
pretty
you.
cool.
It's great to be with you today.
Yes, and I hope you'll come back on too, John.
You
So
bet.
we want to get updates from you. So
Okay.
so
You got
go
it.
buy your first home. Go buy your first home. And if you don't think you can do it, and one more thing, all the things that John and others ask you to do so you can buy a home will help you in every other aspect of your life as well. So
Exactly.
it's yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, John, one more time. Give us your website.
It's mainstreetloans.com or johnwmillette.com. And just go on there and you can contact me and we'll take care of you.
Yeah, and thank you for your work, John. And
Okay.
thank you to you and your team. We appreciate you.
All right.
Bye to the audience.
All right.
You've been listening to Human Potential at Work. To learn more about Rue Global Impact, visit rueglobal.com. And to learn more about Billion Strong, an identity and empowerment organization designed to bring the billions of voices of persons with disabilities together, You can join the global community and donate at billion-strong.org. That's billion-strong.org.